Hello, everyone, and welcome to the next edition of our Alumni Files video series. I'm Sydney Hochstein. I'm the Director of Development here at St. Bernard Academy. Today, I am joined by Mr. Pat Nolan. Pat attended SBA from the time he was in kindergarten through 5th grade, and he's a past parent and a past board member. He was one of the founding members of the Board of Trust for St. Bernard Academy. Pat is a wealth of info about St. Bernard, and I'm really excited to have him here today to talk. So thank you for being here, Pat.
Great to be here, Sydney.
Yeah. So let's go ahead and get started. I'll ask my first question. I know you have many, many ties to St. Bernard and the Sisters of Mercy, even going back to some of your early days as an infant. So if you could just tell us a little bit about that, that would be great.
Well, my parents moved into their first house in November of 1951. I was less than a year old, and that was about 3 blocks. It was on Sunset Place, about 3 blocks from St. Bernard. Mm-hmm. My father's sister, Sister Mary Bernadelle, was in the Mercy community for over 60 years, and she was stationed at St. Bernard at the time. So because it was so close, we used to go up there, and I have a picture of my mother holding me in her lap when I was, and then probably the first time I visited St. Bernard, which I would looking at it looks like it would have been an early 52, because the weather looked warm, and I was born in December of 51.
Oh, wow.
And I have one of Sister Bernadelle holding me too in her lap. And looks like it was taken on the same one. They're 2 of my most favorite pictures, but it looks like it was, if it wasn't the first, it was one of the first times I ever went to St. Bernard.
Wow. And you were just a few months old then, I take it.
I was, yeah. Now later we used to go and visit the sisters. It used to be a little restrictive to go see them. It used to be we had to meet with them only outside on the grounds, and then they would ring the bell and they all had to go in. But later it changed enough that we were able to meet with them in some of the old meeting rooms, the old parlors up on the 2nd floor of the convent building. And then eventually I was able to get down and be in the community room where they were also on the 2nd floor. And I was rather precocious as a child. And Berna used to teach me how to memorize and do some things. She sent me records. I had a record player at home, and so I had memorized a lot of songs and other things. And she put me up on the table, and I would sing to the sisters.
Oh, wow.
And there may still be a couple of sisters who still remember me doing that. I kind of hope they're not, but I hope they're still here, but I kind of hope they don't remember that. But I did that for a couple of years before I started school up there. And when I started school, when I started kindergarten, I was, because of my late birthday, I was 4.5 when I started kindergarten and 5.5 when I started school. So I was a little bit young, but I do remember being in kindergarten up there. And I remember being in school for several years up there. I remember all my teachers.
Wow.
Sister Monica for kindergarten, Sister Joanne Marie for 1st and 2nd grade, Sister Gregory for 3rd and 4th grade, and Sister Mary Joseph was my teacher the very last year I was at St. Bernard.
Wow, it's incredible you remember all that.
Well, it just kind of sticks in my mind.
Yeah. So speaking of, some of your memories there, what were some of your favorite ones that you recall from your time at SBA?
Well, I had 2 that have come to mind, and they're both a little bit odd. One of them came from the fact that 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, St. Bernard offered French lessons. So I remember taking 3 years of French classes when I was in the 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. I don't remember a whole lot of the language, but I do remember a few words out of that. And and then I also remember, of course, we were in the same building for a couple of the years. In the high school was still in the convent building, and so was the grammar school. Well, I was in the 3rd and 4th grade when they built the current building that St. Bernard is in, the high school building. And I guess I was on the back side of the building, and I heard every dynamite blast it took to put stations over there. And we were down there when they did the groundbreaking, and we were all down there as a part of the ceremony when they opened the school, the new high school down there.
Oh, wow.
The girls in the high school also used to have some lunch days. And in my mind, they held them during Lent, but I'm not sure they did, because obviously they had some special foods. They bring in some desserts. And in the afternoon, when we had an afternoon break, whatever class it was would roll in a number of trays full of desserts. We had to pay for them, but we always brought some extra lunch money that day to buy a piece of pie or a chocolate cake or something. I guess I remember that because it was fun to be able to get out of school and be able to do that.
Yeah, I bet.
One of my other favorite memories was from January 20th of 1961. I remember that because that's when John F. Kennedy was inaugurated president. Yeah. John F. Kennedy was the first Catholic to ever be president of the United States. And of course, that made him a very special person to all the sisters. So the entire school took off the day that day, sat up in the community room or the auditorium upstairs on the second floor and watched the entire inauguration. We did not do any classes at all that day.
Wow.
And another interesting story, and I don't have any direct memories of this, but I know this happened. When John Kennedy came to Nashville, President Kennedy in May of 1963, he spoke at Vanderbilt, and then he was going to go from there over to the governor's residence out on Curtiswood Lane. Well, in the process of doing that, he passed by St. Bernard along 21st Avenue up there at the very top of the drive that goes into the convent area.
Yeah.
Well, he noticed that the sisters were there. He stopped the motorcade and got out and shook hands with all of them.
Oh my.
And it worked out well for me because my dad and I and a couple of my siblings had been down at the Vanderbilt speech. We immediately left after the speech and came home down Natchez Trace, got up to the top of 21st Avenue at the top of Sunset. And we were able to get there largely because he stopped to watch him as he passed by so we could watch his motorcade.
What an incredible memory. That is so cool. It's awesome.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. You left St. Bernard in 5th grade. Well, that was your last year there.
After 5th grade, I left primarily because I don't know why I did this, but I wanted to play football. I wanted to play parochial league football. St. Bernard did not have a team.
Yeah.
That's why I went to Cathedral. I also knew several of the boys, particularly that were in that class. And I'd have to tell you, one of the reasons I also left St. Bernard was that I think either my 3rd or 4th grade year, there were 30 girls in my class and 3 boys.
Mm.
And let's just say that was at an age when having that many girls around was not considered to be a good thing.
Right.
Then 7th or 8th grade, I probably would have liked that a whole lot.
Yeah. So tell us about your kind of path after that, education-wise and career-wise, family-wise, all that.
I left Cathedral and went to Father Ryan for 4 years, back when Father Ryan was on Elliston Place. After that, my senior year, I applied to go to Peabody and Vanderbilt. I wanted to go to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt, of course, doesn't admit till April. Peabody, as soon as they got my application, admitted me and gave me a half scholarship, which was $600. So tuition was $1,200 to go to college. Yeah. I know that sounds, you can't do doggy daycare for $1,200 these days, but they gave me a half scholarship. My parents said that they had 5 other kids at home and they knew I was going to have to stay at home. I couldn't have stayed on campus. And they said, half scholarship, that's where you're going to school. So that's what I wound up doing. In the summer before I went to school, I had decided I was interested in broadcasting. So they sent me to Atlanta and I went to a broadcasting school down there where at the end of it, I took a test and got my FCC license. In those days, if you're going to be on the radio, you had to have a license from the FCC. So I did that. I came back. I went my first 2 years to school at Peabody, majoring in political science and minoring in history. Then I transferred to Vanderbilt and finished there the last 2 years, graduated in the class of 1973.
Okay.
So Father Ryan class was 69. Then I came out and because I didn't have a job and I was fairly serious about marrying the woman I had been married to since Betty Lee. We've been married 47 years.
Wow.
In April.
Congratulations.
So I thank you. So fortunately for me, I had no idea what I was going to do for a job. And I was the first person in my direct family to have graduated from college. Now I had Sister Bernadette had graduated. My uncle, who was a priest and a monk down in Conyers, Georgia at the Trappist Monastery, he had taken extended stuff, but nobody else in my dad's family had done that. So I was one of the first to go to college. Here I was graduating from Vanderbilt and they thought, well, this is going to be great. You're going to get a great job and everything. Well, I didn't have a job.
Oh no.
Well, my next door neighbor told my mother, she worked at the library in Green Hills. And she had seen a notice on the bulletin board out there that WPLN had a position open that was funded by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting. It was a grant to do news. Well, she gave it to me and I went out and saw him. I did an audition, including covering a conference that was going on at Cheekwood, and I got the job. And that's where I was for the first 2 years we were married.
Okay.
Now they paid me like a bill. I didn't get a check on a regular Friday or everything else. I got it kind of when they got the invoice from me and they paid it within a couple of weeks. So we mostly lived off my wife's paycheck at Third National. She was in the trust department.
Yeah.
Then one day I got a call from Chris Clark at Channel 5, who was the longtime anchor there and news director, and asked me if I was interested in being in television. I didn't expect to get a call from him, so I said, well, yeah, I hadn't thought about doing it right then. He said, well, come down and see me. And so I did. I went to work at Channel 5 in March 3rd, 1975.
Wow.
When I started there, I was the youngest person in the newsroom. When I go down there today as their political analyst, I am usually the oldest person in the newsroom, usually by far.
How old were you when you started there then?
I was 23.
23. Okay.
And when I go down there now, I'm obviously almost 70. And it's a young person's game. That's pretty much the way it's always been. So I stayed at Channel 5 for 10 years. Also, while I was still at PLN, I got asked to do the first live coverage of the Metro Council meetings here in town. And I did those starting with every meeting in a couple of years after we got started. We were only doing only the first we were doing the public hearings that were going on zoning matters. We did the first meeting because the neighborhood around Vanderbilt was concerned about the urban renewal program they were doing over there. And I knew something about it having just been in school. So I got hired to be the person to do that first show. And I kept doing it all the time I was at Channel 5. And I stayed doing that until it was time, until I got approached and decided to go to work for Mayor Fulton in the mayor's office.
Yeah.
I went to work with Mayor Fulton in June of 1985. Stayed as his press secretary and executive assistant until just about the time he left office. He left in the fall of 87, and I left sort of the end of June. We hosted the U.S. Conference of Mayors meeting here. When that was over, I went ahead and transitioned out to do that. So I worked there, and when I left the mayor's office, I went to work for somebody I knew a little bit when I was at Father Ryan, Tommy Hart, who was running his own advertising and PR agency, and I took a job with him being his executive vice president in charge of the public relations group. I was pretty much a staff of one, so it was hard for me to compete against some of the larger firms. Yeah. After I'd been there about 4 years, I then went to work for the largest PR firm in town at the time, which was Dye Van Mullen Lawrence, and stayed there for 26 years before I retired at the end of 2018.
Oh, wow.
And I've now retired from my full-time job, but I'm still doing the work at Channel 5. When I left the mayor's office, as I was leaving, after I'd already decided to go to work for Tommy Hart again, or for him, one day my phone rang in my office, and it was from Tom Irvin, who was the general manager at Channel 5 at the time. He said, could you walk down here, because Channel 5 studios are where they are now, about a block and a half from the courthouse. He said, I want to talk to you. So I went down to see him, and he said, have you ever thought about being a political analyst? And I looked at him and said, I didn't really quite know what it was. And I said, well, I kind of hemmed and hawed around it. Well, he offered me a job to come there and do that part-time. So I did that for about 5 years until the end of 92. Then they'd had a change in news directors and didn't really know what I was doing, what my job was. Mm-hmm. And they didn't like paying me. Well, I didn't like doing it for free. So that it kind of ended at that point. Yeah. In 94, the news director at Channel 4 approached me about coming over there, and I worked there from 94 until 99. Wow. When I went over to Channel 5, and I've been at Channel 5 ever since. So I've been in the media just about every year, one way or the other, since about 1973.
So amidst all of that, at what point did you get reconnected with St. Bernard and kind of continue your ties there?
When my oldest daughter, Katie, was beginning to look at going to school, at that time, St. Bernard had a 3 to 5 year old Montessori program. Mm-hmm. And my aunt, Sister Bernadette, was back at St. Bernard. She had been all over the state as a elementary school teacher and as a principal, but she was back at St. Bernard, the head of that Montessori program. And so we thought that was a good place to put Katie to start.
Yeah.
And it worked out very well. I will tell you one funny story. The day that her little sister was born, Kelly, on a Saturday, the following Monday, Katie was supposed to start her first day in school at Montessori. Oh. Well, she had been well taught by her mother, don't mess with strangers, don't get in cars with strangers. Well, my mother-in-law, I was at Channel 5 working that day. My mother-in-law was there to take care of Katie and hand her off to the lady who was taking her in the carpool over to school. Well, Katie did not want to get in at all. In the same car with anybody that she didn't know. Well, finally, and Kelly was supposed to be home by that Monday, but she come down with jaundice, so she had to stay in the hospital a little bit longer. Wasn't serious, but in those days, they wouldn't let you go home unless they'd taken care of that. And they probably still don't do it now. But So they got Betty Lee on the phone, and she somehow talked Katie into getting in the car and going to school.
Oh my gosh.
And then once I got back, I started taking both her and her sister to St. Bernard's from that time in 1982 until Kelly graduated there in 1997. So I went there for about 15 years. I used to say I could put my car into gear and it would drive itself there. I didn't have to.
It was just automatic. It knew where it was going.
Automatically. And I think you find at St. Bernard, now I don't have any children there right now or even grandchildren yet, but I think parents are like, I think we have a lot of longtime parents, people who put several people through there. I know the Edwards were like that for many years. And I think that's one of the unique things about St. Bernard, what dedicated and longtime parents that you have in the parent body.
Yeah, yeah. So you had an interesting time as a parent at St. Bernard. Prior to doing this interview, you had shared with me a chapter from a book that you're writing, and you talked about two very important phone calls that you had gotten from St. Bernard in regards to St. Bernard, and you mentioned that they kind of changed your life in the course of SBA's history. So I was hoping you could tell us about those phone calls and kind of everything that happened afterward.
Well, the first call I got was, I think it was in 1987. I had left the mayor's office. I was working at Hart and Company, and I got a phone call from a classmate of mine at Father Ryan, Phil Mattingly. Phil was a parent at St. Bernard. At that time, Katie was at St. Bernard. Kelly was not quite ready to start. She was going to start the next year in Montessori. Phil was also the chairman at the time of an advisory board that the school had, and he wanted to know if I would be willing to come on that advisory board. And I said, yeah, what do you do? And he said, well, we advise with sister on things that she needs advice about, and particularly financial things. And he said, and we eat M&Ms. Well, I like M&Ms at the meeting. So I said, okay, I do it. Well, about a couple months later, not long after I'd gone on the board, I got a phone call from Sister Melanie, who was the principal at the time. Sister Melanie wanted me to come up to the convent building and meet with Sister Mary Coleman, who was the Mother Superior. Well, I did that. And I walked in the door up there, and the first thing they told me was they were going to close St. Bernard and move out to Pennington Bend because they had some property given to them. They were going to build a new facility out there, and they were going to close the high school. Well, I mean, I felt like somebody had kicked me in the stomach.
Yeah. I imagine that'd be a tough conversation to have.
So I handled the announcement of what was going to happen with the closing of the school. Now they did not do any elaborate or any kind of negotiations with the parents about that, and they caught a good bit of heat about just closing it without really a lot of pushback or reach out to do something about that.
Yeah.
We weren't at first. They basically told the people that were in the grammar school that we were going to move. They were going to move the grammar school down to the high school building, and we thought that's great. And so it looked like it was going to be great. Certainly, we had access to it at the time. There was a pool at St. Bernard. There was certainly a large gym down there, and there was a library. All the things that we really didn't have in the grammar school. So we were, in some ways, kind of excited about it, although we had to be careful about that because there were a lot of people that were unhappy that the high school was closing.
Yeah.
Well, then as time went on, there was a newspaper article about kind of how things were progressing, and one of the sisters basically said, "Well, we think we're making a commitment to stay down at the school in the high school building for maybe 2 to 3 years."
Yeah.
But when you go to an elementary school and you start in kindergarten and you go through the 8th grade, you're going to be there for like 9 years, and a 3-year commitment is not a real good commitment for the parents. They would like something. They like to know that there's going to be something there longer than that.
Yeah.
So we didn't quite know what to do. A lot of people are by this time of year, people are beginning to go out and look at what's going on in other schools and go by and visit other schools, kick the tires, see if that's where they wanted to put their children at. And finally, one day, Phil Mattingly decided it was a good idea for us to try to buy it. And we had some people, we were lucky on our board. We had some people that knew about the zoning and knew about the 501c3 we'd have to form and all that kind of stuff. And we talked to the sisters about buying it. And at first, I don't know how serious they thought we were. And they were fortunately, we did work it out. I mean, we had our ups and downs doing the negotiations. And finally, in late July, early August, we came to an agreement to buy it. I mean, literally, the last big issue was if for some reason the school didn't make it, who would get first option to take back over the building and the grounds. And we wanted it to be, we wanted to let the board have the opportunity at that time to make that decision, whether it was 2 years later or 100 years later.
Yeah.
And so we managed to get the sisters to go ahead and agree with that. They also were very nice to us in terms of the financing. They allowed us to make some lump sum payments the first couple of years. So we sold chocolate Easter bunnies and everything you can think of to raise money to do that. And we had a little money left over from the home and school to do that. And then finally, we managed to slowly raise up tuition so that we could start paying principal and interest. And that's what we did. So it has worked out pretty well. I mean, probably if we had known all the things we were going to get into when we decided to do this, we might have thought twice about it. But it worked out. Literally, down to the very end, we were doing the final negotiations about it. And I remember Phil Manley saying to me, I want you to prepare 2 news releases. One that says, hooray, we did it. The school's going to open. And
oh man,
sorry, it's not going to happen. Fortunately, we only got to you. I get to throw one of them away. That was the one.
Yeah. Wow.
It was an interesting experience. I've never been anything quite like it before.
Yeah, I can imagine. When I first started at SBA over the summer, that was, I think, one of the first stories that Chuck told me about, and it was just really cool to hear that the parents were so invested to
well, they were, and as a matter of fact, the parents were so invested that first of all, they got all the kids to do to put together sort of a line, and they literally passed the books down there for the library, from the school library up the convent building, what we had in Texas, all the way down there to into the school.
Oh,
and of course, I called the TV stations. It was great pictures. They all came out and took pictures of that.
oh wow.
But the other thing the parents did was the high school building by this time was closed. And, you know, like any building, by that time in the late 80s, it was almost 30 years old. And so the parents literally went down there on consecutive weekends and spent all day painting and cleaning and basically getting it ready to do that. And they did all of that themselves. We didn't have the money to get that done.
That's very cool. So in the chapter that you wrote, you had talked about how, you know, of all the things that you've done professionally and in your personal life, you were, you know, the most proud of what you had done at St. Bernard, you and the other parents. And so I guess I was just wondering why, you know, to you personally, why was it so important? Why was that effort to save SBA so important?
Well, it was I wanted my children first to have a quality education, and I knew they were getting that. So I started all that. I started to do all this strictly personal, selfish reasons. I mean, I wanted Katie and Kelly to have a great education, and they did. But from there, having seen how the school has continued to grow and prosper and be a strong educational beacon for, I think, the rest of the community, I feel good about having played a role in that. Even though that's been over 30 years ago, that's a good feeling. And so, yeah, I mean, maybe it doesn't say I've done very much else in my life, but that's certainly one of the things I'm most proud of. Anything I've done in the media or anything else I've done in any of my professional life. It's been great. I've been very happy that I was able to play a role in all my life there.
Yeah. And now you are about to have a new role at SBA as a grandparent. What are you looking forward to, you know, as having a grandchild here now, of having gone here yourself and been a parent, and now this? It'll
be fun. You know, there'll be a lot of tradition.
Yeah.
I've got 2 older grandchildren who've both been to St. Rose, and one's an 8th grader this year, the other one's in the 6th grade. So I'm used to being a grandparent in a Catholic school. So I'm looking forward to going to Grandparents' Day or Grandparent. I know St. Bernard used to have a grandparent chocolate, and whenever they have it, I'm sure we're going to try to be there, as we've continued to do that for Sean and Libby.
Yeah.
I'm looking forward to the opportunity to do that with them and watch them grow older.
Well, Pat, this has been really great. I thank you so much for joining me today and doing this interview. It's been enlightening to hear your memories and all of the history that you've had. So thank you.
Okay, I'm glad to do it. I hope I didn't talk too much.
No, this was wonderful. It was perfect. All right. Well, thank you again. We'll talk to you again.
Thank you. Good to be with you.